This is Andy Purewal for Boxing Social in association with Betfred. And for the first time for the channel, you probably don't remember it, Willie, but I interviewed you when you came over for Billy Joe Saunders. But as I've just said, Willie Monroe Jr., I'm delighted to be joined by you. How are you doing?
Dope, man. That's dope, man. Thanks for reminding me of that. I'm doing well, and yourself?
That's good to hear, mate. I'm all good as well. Thankfully, my family's healthy, which is the main thing. How are you and your family doing during these tough times?
We're doing great. We're doing great. It's a blessing to be a blessing. You know what I mean? So we've helped some people. We've been helped. We during this time we did suffer a house fire. So, under this interview, I'd just like to thank everybody who sent great prayers and wishes and good energy to us. We're doing great.
It's obviously unfortunate to hear that, Willie. How is everything kind of not repaired, but how have you kind of found kind of getting everything back together since?
I mean, my motto, brick by brick. You see the T-shirt, BXB. And once you're broken down to the bottom, you can't do nothing. You can't complain. You can't do nothing but start building again. So, it's almost like the phoenix rising from the ashes. So we just got to take this a day at a time. We're in our resurrection phase right now.
Well, I look forward to seeing obviously the end goal there, and hopefully everything works itself right back for you, but obviously hopefully everything clears up for you and you have a brighter future ahead with regards to all of that. But how is life anyway? How have you found lockdown?
All is well, man. It's not, the lockdown is been a little easy, because they've opened up, a few more stores, 2 malls have been open. And it's the whole social distance thing is still obviously still in effect, and it's only a certain few amount of people that can go into the mall and shop and buy things, but it's slowly but surely getting back to it's going in a direction that makes us happy. I'll say that.
What's kind of been your training regime during lockdown? What have you or have you not been able to do training wise?
Well, all of the boxing gyms were closed, so hitting the bag, moving around the ring, speed bag, all of that traditional boxing stuff was out. But I'm fortunate enough to be endorsed by Everlast, and I have a lot of equipment at my house. So, I was able to, run my, I mapped out a couple 5-mile routes. Just so I break the monotony of running that same 5-mile route all the time. We shadow box with the weights. You can do your sit-ups, your pull-ups. I go to the park or I'll jump up in a tree and do some pull-ups if I have to. Training during this pandemic and staying in shape during this pandemic hasn't been tough for me, because you have to remember, the end of 2011, me and a close friend of mine, like after I lost to Darnell Boone and everything went down, it seemed like everything's down the drain for me. We turned the garage into a gym, so we were able we were resilient and smart enough to be able to be creative up here and make up for what we would miss if we, out of a gym. So when this whole pandemic hit, it was like, okay, well, I trained in a garage for 2.5 years, and we made it happen. So, I just started looking around at things I had and put together a regimen. I even got my family in shape. My wife has a little 4-pack now, so.
So I'll take it she's been training you then.
Right, yeah. Keeping me up.
Let's talk boxing, Willie. Obviously before lockdown was put into place, what kind of plans did you have for the coming year, or for the rest of this year, I should say?
We were just surveying the landscape, because before the lockdown, went into effect and COVID happened, we had just signed to new management, David McWaters, who's a freaking phenomenal manager. I mean, he has Teofimo Lopez, he has Ivan Branchik. I mean, the list goes on. It's just awesome fighters he has. And, we were blessed enough to have his consideration. And thanks to Ryan Recton, my advisor who you spoke to, he made this whole thing happen. And like my motto, we were a free agent, and brick by brick, we just started to build. And, with the managerial powers and understanding and business mindset of Ryan and David, mixed with, with my knowledge of boxing and being a fighter, You know, it was like a match made in heaven. And now we're being considered for a Canelo fight. So it's like, you know, it's like, you know, things went from 0 to 100, you know, while things were in a low spot, you know. So God is great.
We will come on to that, you know, the Canelo fight in a question or two time, but just to stick with obviously the current situation, you mentioned, you know, a new management team behind you, you're kind of working behind the scenes now. When boxing, we're seeing boxing return as it is, you know, behind closed door shows, when it is in full effect and everything seems to be back to some form of normality, how do you see your career progressing with regards to, do you feel like every boxer, not just yourself, will feel a pressure to try to put themselves into the ring as quickly or as often as possible to make up for the lost time through this pandemic?
Um, I'll say this. I've had a for myself. I've had a pattern. You got to look at, if you go and look at my, you know, my history, just because of the ups and downs in the business of boxing. You know, if you look at it, you see that I had a 17, a 13, a 12, and now looking forward, God willing, I get the Canelo fight. It'll be 15 months in between that and my last fight. So if you look at 17, 13, 12, and 15. I've stayed consistent over not being active over almost 5 years of my career. You get what I'm saying? So it's instilled a discipline in me that, damn, while I was off 17 months, I stayed in shape. Because if you go back and look, every time I came back I always came back at 158 or 159 pounds. So I'm a middleweight. So when guys take these long layoffs and they ended up coming back, they're like, I need to be 2 or 3 pounds because I haven't been in the ring in a while. But for a guy like me to leave at 159 and then to come back in my next fight 16 months later at 159, that shows that in between those 17 months, I stayed in shape. I stayed ready. So mentally, I've been through over a year layoff, 4 or 5 times where I stayed in shape. So this is something that I've practiced time and time again. Now, the other fighters who have been spoiled and had a lot of money and haven't had those layoffs, let's see how this layoff affects them. Were they diligent enough to stay in shape in this off time? Were they diligent enough to keep the aggression and the mindset, even though there was no fights? And now that we're about to fight with no crowds and no screaming fans and stuff like that, will you be able to get out there and put on the way you've been able to put on before, you know, pre-COVID? And this is what makes me thankful for the ups and downs in my career, because it's like Ultimate Intelligence already knew COVID and this type of, where Ultimate Intelligence already knew where life was going for humanity. So it gave me some rough ups and downs to prepare me for this jump. I'm prepared for this jump. Are they prepared? That's the question.
Talking about that, Willie, you mentioned, you know, over the past 5 years, you've only looked to fight once each year. How do you think that suited you, and why have you gone down that route? Because some fighters, they'd look at it the opposite perspective and think, I need to get out 2 or 3 times to try and get a big fight. Whereas you've had Golovkin, Saunders, the potential Canelo fight as well. Why do you think it has benefited you to only fight once a year instead of other fighters who will go 2, 3, 4 times?
Well, I wouldn't say I only fought once a year over the last 5 years, because I'm going all, when I gave you those layoffs, I'm going all the way back to 2011. So we're talking 9 years here. So when you look at that, how it's helped me is, I think it's preserved my body, because a lot of 33-year-olds with over 30 fights, 35 fights, you know, some of them are shot. You know what I mean? Some of them have been in a lot of wars. I think the most damage anybody has seen me take was the Golovkin fight. You know what I mean? But you have fighters out here who take damage and go in there and give and take, fight after fight after fight after fight. That shit wears you down, man. It wears you out. It takes years off of your career. So for the fact that I'm a slick boxer, I don't get hit much, and I've had those layoffs, it's almost preserved me. So if you take those 5 years that I missed in the boxing world and subtract that from my years as a fighter, from my years now, like how old I am, and then you add in the factor that I don't get hit much. You take 5 ways away. I mean, I'm like 27 years old, 28 years old. So I mean, I'm just a very disciplined person. You know, I kind of knew stepping into the professional ranks that my career would go like this, simply because when I came out of the amateurs, you know, like I lost in the Olympic qualifiers to Sean Porter, and then Sean Porter became Olympic alternate. So I was just sort of left on the, you know, on the tracks. I was a 3-time national champion, but I didn't have enough hype around me. Had a great amateur career, had a big name, but I didn't have enough hype around me for someone like a big promoter to be interested enough to say, I want to put my investment and time into this guy. So it wasn't until, you know, after Boxino to where people started saying, yo, this guy is, this guy is championship quality. This guy's championship material. So it took me about 6 years to get to where guys had gotten 2 or 3 years. But in those 6 years in that road less travel, I picked up a lot of discipline. I learned how to be more resilient, and it's made me more hungry, I would say.
Final question before we do come on to the future. You just mentioned obviously you had a brilliant amateur background, and for whatever reason you wasn't quite picked up by one of the big time promoters at the beginning of your career. What would you put that down to? Obviously, you have this brilliant amateur background, as you've mentioned, and as we've just spoken about. And when you look at the current landscape in boxing, we're seeing a lot of younger professionals who have terrific amateur pedigree turning over sooner and are being picked up by big-time promoters. Why do you think at your stage of your career, when you turned pro, you wasn't quite given the green light or wasn't given that big-time deal?
I mean, you got to look at the jump that social media has taken over the last 10 years. You know what I mean? Like when I turned pro, that was 2008. You know, back in, I think in 2008, Facebook was only for college students because I was in college at that time. So it was a time where Facebook was strictly for college students. You know, I still have my college ID where I signed into Facebook. And like now everybody and their mama has a Facebook. You know what I mean? So literally think about that. Like when my career started and, you know, I finished my last semester in college in 07 and I turned pro in 08. Facebook wasn't even for everybody. So you think about now it's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of this stuff, so much information where a guy can, and then if you have promoters don't really today, they don't really care about whether you can actually fight or not. Can you put asses in seats? That's the name of the game right now. I mean, you got Jake Paul and Logan Paul who, you know, just learned how to box in the last couple of years and their social media following is so huge. You know, they both made more money in their first 2 fights that I've made my whole career. Crazy, right?
Yeah, it is, mate. It is, but it's again, it's like you say, it's different audiences and the way times are changing. You know, what do you make of cross sport? You know, we're seeing YouTubers come in, potential UFC stars coming into boxing. When McGregor fought Mayweather, potentially Francis Ngannou and Dillian White up at heavyweight. What do you make when people from different fields or different sports cross over into boxing?
And I love it because it's all the same. Why not? Why not go ahead and have some fun? You know, I look at myself. You ever heard J. Cole's song Middle Child?
I haven't, no. I am a J. Cole fan, but I haven't heard.
J. Cole is very conscious. I'm gonna get off topic a little bit, but he calls himself the middle child. And all of the kids born between like 1980, 1990, we're considered like the indigos, the middle children. So it's our job to connect the old generation and the new wave. You get what I'm saying? So I'm 100% down for it, man. If I could fight McGregor, I would do it. You know what I mean? If I could fight a MMA fighter, you know what I mean? Actually, I told my wife and my brother, I said, you know what? Once I win a world title in boxing, I'm going to go ahead and go over to UFC and see if I can get a world title at like 154 or 155. I said, because, you know, John Jones is a really good friend of mine and we've sparred together. We're both from the same hometown. We both had like 3 training camps together in a small town in New York called Ithaca, New York. You know, we're both from Rochester and he moved to a small city called Endicott. And we both became real good friends. And he taught me some dope moves, man. You know, John Jones is the king of MMA and UFC. So I told my wife, I said, man, once I win a title in boxing, I might just jump the fence, literally, you know, and go try my hand in that MMA thing because it's fun. Why not?
Is that an exclusive for us there then, Willie, that we could potentially see you in a year or 2 to come over in the UFC?
You are the first person to hear this.
Let's get into, obviously, you've just mentioned world title plans and the fight that you've mentioned briefly earlier on, Canelo. Where did it all come about? Obviously, Canelo, I've interviewed Callum Smith, Billy Joe Saunders, who were both after that fight. There's numerous guys who would love to fight Canelo. He's the golden goose, the golden ticket everybody calls him in boxing these days. Where did kind of your name begin to get mentioned, and what was your thoughts and your reaction to being mentioned to potentially face Canelo?
Well, like I said, I'm signed to David McWaters, and I think the thing about guys getting fights lines up behind correct representation. You know what I mean? Like, how many times have we seen a great fighter not get an opportunity simply because he wasn't represented right? How many times have we seen music artists? That happen to music artists all the time. You're like, yo, why isn't this music artist bigger than this other music artist, and he's better? And everybody agrees that he's better. Well, he doesn't have the right management. He doesn't have the right representation, so he's not going to get that opportunity. But now I have the right opportunity, it's a political game. Boxing is a game of what have you done for me lately? What have you done to deserve this? Or who are you with that I would owe this opportunity to, that represents you, that this will make not only a good business deal, but a great fight. It goes a lot deeper. And now that I've been in the business and been around, and been like a fly on the wall in a bunch of different rooms and meetings, and I understand that the business of it. Because me, I still had this innocent go-getter, I'm a train and be the best type attitude. And I put myself in that vicinity purposely so I wouldn't be distracted by everything else that comes with it. But you got to be smart enough to peek your head outside every once in a while and be like, all right, that's reality. You know what I mean? Like, it's a difference between reality and this fairy tale that I've created inside my head. And like I said, I created this fairy tale inside my head to keep me in the confines of staying disciplined, doing the right thing. But you can stay disciplined and do the right things, but it's also smart enough to peek your head outside a little bit and gather that information so you know which way you're going. And now that I'm signed to, Split T, I think that's a reason why, they're considering me for Canelo, because it's good business. It's good business. I think it's a good fight. The fight has been, talked about since 2016. They gave me a 3.5-week notice, Golden Boy, De La Hoya. They gave me a 3.5-week notice to fight Gabe Rosado. And they were so, sure that I was going to lose to Rosado. They were like, yo, Rosado did better against Triple G than him, which I don't believe so. Rosado's been in bigger fights. He's stronger. He has more knockouts. This is a match. That fight was created for Rosado to win. And they gave me the fight on, I think on a 25 or 26-day notice. And it's a 12-round title fight, a co-feature to Canelo in front of 80,000 fans. So the pressure of this, and with 3 weeks to train and prepare for it, should have crushed me. So they arrogantly said, we'll let you fight Canelo if you beat Rosado. It was more or less like, he's not going to beat, It was more like one of those things. Well, guess what? I showed up, and not only did I beat him, everybody was like, yo, we've never seen Rosado get beat that way. Even when he fought Triple G, he put Triple G in a position to where Triple G had to fight. Like, Triple G had to bang out and make him respect him. Triple G had a mouse under his eye and everything when he fought Gabe Rosado. Like, because Gabe Rosado makes you fight. But I put Gabe Rosado in a box and made him just look confused for 12 rounds straight. So now people were like, all right, now we're interested. Now we want to see this, because you guys said Monroe, the winner of this fight, would get it. And ironically, Monroe got it. But he made that fight so easy to where now we really want to see a Canelo fight. And then Canelo's trainer said we would never fight Monroe. He pretty much said, fuck Monroe. He said we wouldn't fight Monroe. He said if that's the case, we'd just go back and fight Erislan De Lara again. I said, oh, so you would rather go get your ass kicked again than to come over here and get your ass kicked for real. You get what I'm saying? So you'd rather go back, because I thought Lara won against Canelo. But it is what it is. I see how the pendulum sways, why people would say, nah, Canelo pressed. There's so many different nuances that play into why you will win a fight. But I say all of that to say, I'm on his ass. I want Canelo.
One thing that I find interesting that you said there, obviously back to 2016 when your name was being mentioned by their team to potentially face him. When you look at his past opponents over his past few years, Sergey Kovalev, he was in talks with Callum Smith, but that never went anywhere. Had Golovkin, obviously fought Golovkin twice. There was a gap, and we was looking at the third fight. People trying to suggest, and you see it over social media, that he's trying to pick the right moments to fight who he wants to choose who he wants to face. Do you feel that yourself, that he's kind of waited, if you was to get the fight, do you feel that he's kind of waiting those extra few years in your case till he faces you to make sure he has the best chance on beating you?
I wouldn't say. I would say this. I would say that I think Canelo's team know that I'm a little bit of a difficult fight, and I think they didn't want to risk him looking bad or possibly getting beat before a Golovkin fight, because the Golovkin fights were huge. You know, outside of actual skill and boxing, the application to the game, business is business. So I respect it, you know what I mean? But I patiently waited for 4 years. I think I should get it now. You know, simply the business said, well, you know, you could end up being a snag in our game. And yes, we did promise you this. And I gracefully said, you know what? I understand. I didn't get into it with anybody. I didn't go on social media blasting De La Hoya or any of Golden Boy for not making good on the contract. I didn't say anything bad about Canelo. I just said, you know what? God bless him. We'll meet someday. And, you know, I had to wait a whole year before I actually fought again. Then I had to go over to London to fight Billy Joe Saunders. So I think with the ups and downs, I think with the trash that has been thrown at me and the fact that I've been able to just turn the other cheek and not go crazy, not go belligerent, and just get back on the horse. You know what I mean? I get knocked off the horse, I get back on it and jump right back on and start riding. You know, I'm on a 3-fight win streak against good guys, and after the Billy Joe Saunders fight, and you guys haven't seen me complain once. You guys haven't seen me, you know, talk about anything bad. You guys haven't seen me try to throw anyone under the bus. I just deal with what comes my way and keep training and keep working. So I think just under the resilience, under my application to the game, my honor for the game, my respect for the game, my respect for other fighters, I think I deserve the big fight.
Where does the land lie with that Canelo fight then? Because obviously your name's been mentioned. We saw Anthony Durrell. We saw Sergei Derevyanchenko's names both mentioned these past couple of weeks. What kind of talks, or if anything, have you had with their team?
So I haven't had any personal talks. I'm letting David and Ryan do what they do, because, you know, at the end of the day, Canelo is a cash cow. Canelo is the guy. You know, he's with Golden Boy in the zone, and they're going to make the best possible decision for Canelo. So I haven't really, you know, once I was more happy and elated that my name was mentioned again. And then it seems like, you know, on Instagram, it's a lot of people that are like, you know what, we want to see this fight now. You know, it seems like more fans are saying my name more than Derevyanchenko, more than I haven't heard anybody really mention Anthony Durrell. And Anthony Durrell is coming off of a crazy loss to Benavidez. You know what I mean? So I'm pretty sure the fans are more or less like, we'd rather see him fight Benavidez, but, you know, that's a story for another day, you know, as far as Canelo and Benavidez. And I think Benavidez is probably the best super middleweight on the planet. That's one of my favorite fighters, man. I freaking love that dude.
We'll come on to that in a minute then, because obviously there's a lot of potential fights there. Just with Canelo then, when you watch him these days, what do you see in him? How good of a fighter do you think he is? Many see him as the best in the world. Is he the best in the world pound for pound, in your opinion?
Yeah, man, he's complete. I mean, like, this guy he's not your quintessential, you know, Mexican pride, come forward and knock you, but he has that Mexican aggression. So, I mean, when you mix everything together with him, he doesn't have that, like I said, he's not like a Marco Antonio Barrera or Chavez, and, you know, he fights like one of us. He fight like a black dude. You know what I mean? He's like slick, you know what I mean? He got the little shoulder roll, and, you know, all of these are like definitive, you know, Afro-American, Cuban style. You know what I mean? You would think Canelo's got some African in him somewhere, some Cuban in him, because, you know, he's slick. You know, he's he's fast, he's strong. He has really good eyes. He can stand in front of you, you know, the same way I do, or stand in front of you and you can't hit him. You know what I mean? So I think he's a complete fighter, man. And I think for him to be as great as he is, and to not jump off the track, he's what I call a true champion. This guy's been a millionaire since he was like 19, 20 years old. He's about to be 30, and he's still at the top of his game. The only person he's, like, you know, officially lost to is Floyd Mayweather. It looked like that fight made him better. He's had millions, and he keeps up. He's very professional. When I fought Gabe Rosado on the undercard, like, Canelo made it his business to come to me, introduce himself, took a picture with me before and after we fought. He's very professional. He's a humble guy. I think he's an ultimate champion. He's somebody that, you know, people should look up to, like an Andre Ward or and Canelo. These are the guys you should look up to, because these guys have made the millions. They've become great stars, but they're still humble. You know what I mean? They still apply themselves to the game, because you get some guys who get $2-3 million. Next thing you know, they're fighting 2 weight classes up because they've spent $2 million on food. You know, food and alcohol. But you know, but Canelo, man, I mean, he's showed great discipline, man, and for him to like conquer 4 weight classes and to show that level of discipline, you know, I put him up there with all-time great entertainers. When you're talking, you know, your great fighters like your Roy Joneses, your Andre Wards, your Floyd Mayweathers, he's going to be mentioned in that category because of his application to the game and how long.
Willie, one other name that was mentioned to face Canelo, and the deal by all accounts was very close to being announced before lockdown, was Billy Joe Saunders. Obviously, Billy Joe, a very slick technician, somebody you've shared the ring with. Is that the kind of style you think you need to beat Canelo? If not, you know, how do you go about beating somebody like Saul Alvarez?
You just have to be complete. You know, I think a fight between Saunders and Canelo would be like 45-55, simply because, I mean, Canelo is just a different animal. But I give Billy Joe Saunders props because Billy Joe Saunders, the thing that I appreciate about Billy Joe Saunders, even though he's a piece of shit, you know what I mean, and his son punched and kicked me in the nuts, I'm gonna get him and his son back for that shit. But the thing that I appreciate about Billy Joe Saunders and Tyson Fury is their mind. They have the ability in their mind to see something and execute in that way. Because you could look at Tyson Fury, right, and you could tell that Muhammad Ali is his favorite fighter. He doesn't even have to say it. You can look at him and tell that's who he mocks his style behind. Does he look like Muhammad Ali? Fuck no. Does it look as graceful as Muhammad Ali? Fuck no. But you can tell he watches, like the way he jabs with the open hand, the flick. You know, a lot of people were saying his gloves were loaded. His gloves weren't loaded. Ali used to do that. What they do, actually, his glove wasn't loaded. He probably had a lighter hand wrap in there, so he could open his hand up, and that jab is almost like a back smack. It's what they call a flick jab. And the only people that use that jab are people like Sugar Ray Leonard, you know, Muhammad Ali. You know what I mean? You could tell he watches these. When you look at how he moves and how he makes guys miss. I mean, Tyson Fury is what, 6'8", 6'9"?
9, I believe.
And the way he like moves, and you're like, guys that big don't usually move like that. And I know Tyson Fury goes back and watches his fight and says, man, that shit was so ugly. But in his mind, he thought it was pretty because of the way he executes and the way he thinks of himself. And I know Billy Joe Saunders, like his last fight, like the 2 uppercuts he put dude down with, I mean, even he said it, he looked like shit the whole fight. But the 2 uppercuts he put the guy down with were so awkward and ugly looking. But I know in Billy Joe Saunders' mind, he sees himself as this super technician, you know, super defensive, almost like a Roy Jones. And even though he doesn't look like it, you can tell in his mind that's what he's executing. So you got to appreciate Billy Joe Saunders and Tyson Fury's mind, because I don't think they have the physical talent and the physical attributes to be able to pull off something to look like a Roy Jones or Ali, but you could tell their mind helps their bodies get to the point. It may not look as good, but their mind, because of how well they see themselves. It's just like Prince Nassim. His style was so weird because of how he saw himself, but it worked for him, and it was so awkward. So I say all of that to say, off his awkwardness, if Billy Joe Saunders were in 100% good shape, and he left all of his vices alone, because we know he has some crazy vices outside of the ring. We won't talk about that. But if he bared down, I don't know, for 15 weeks and left those vices alone and really prepared for Canelo, he could cause an upset. I mean, because because of his mind, he has a great mind, he's a strong mind. You know what I mean? And like I said, the fight would be like, to me, it would be 55, but I think he would have a chance.
Willie, I don't want to kind of dwell on the past for too long, but one thing on it, you met with spoken about Billy Joe Saunders, obviously a past opponent of yours. You mentioned his son. Obviously, I know what you're referring to when he came onto the stage. I believe it was at the weigh-in and he hit you in your private area. We'll go with kind of what's your reflection over that entire experience? Not like your time in England, the weigh-in incident, and then the fight itself.
I'll give you this. I'm gonna give you some background, some backdrop language on boxing. You know, when I'm talking about the business of it. Number one, Billy Joe, in the major disrespect that I was dealt over there was a huge level of respect because these guys understood. They did their homework. I've gone in other guys' backyards. That's been like my MO. Like I've gone to other guys' backyards and took their shit and came home. You know what I mean? Like I've been lined up to go lose and I go and fucking win. Like so they're like, yo, this guy is comfortable in shitty situations. So he's comfortable coming to somebody else's hometown. I didn't get paid any money for that. I went over there for the title. I didn't go over there for it. I got paid. Like I don't want to really talk about that, but they knew damn with him accepting this little bit of money, coming over to London, being a year layoff, and his MO is to go into other guys' backyard. Like we know that Willie Monroe takes pride in going in other guys' backyards and winning. He's coming over here we got to make sure that we make him so uncomfortable when he comes over here that by the time we get to the fight, he'll be soft enough for us to, because he eked out, I mean, it was probably 7-5. I think a judge had a 7-5, two other judges had an 8-4. It wasn't a close fight. I mean, it wasn't an exciting fight at all. It was a horrible fight on both of our behalf. Because all you saw was two counterpunchers trying to line up counters. It was a sloppy fight. But I say all of that to say this. They understood that in order for us to get a win over this dude, we're going to have to ruffle his feathers. We're going to have to attack his team. We had to do everything. And they were able to do it because I heard Errol Spence mention, well, I went over to London and they did some stuff to me and I still won. Well, you also went under there. You also went to London under Al Heyman. And the guy you fought was under a Matchroom promotion. So Al Heyman and Matchroom are like some of the biggest guys in boxing. So they're going to make sure when Errol Spence come to London, they know nothing better happened to him because that's going to mess up future business for Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua. We're talking 8 to possibly 9-figure fights. So no, we're not going to mess over Errol Spence. No, we're not going to be at his door early in the morning, knocking on his door and shooting beer at him and doing crazy stuff. No, we're not going to do that to him because if we do that to him and it gets back to Al, guess what? Our business for Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua, our business for other fighters over here in the UK that we have with Al in the US is going to be obsolete. And that's money we're going to miss out on. So if anything, we're going to make sure when Errol gets over here, he doesn't have to deal with too much. But me, I went over there to fight Frank Warren's guy, who isn't big as a promoter as freaking Eddie Hearn. And I was signed to Artie Palullo, which nobody in America even knows who Artie Palullo is. I was signed to like a third-tier promoter. So they didn't give a fuck about respecting him or me. We're like, what is he going to do for us? You know what I mean? We're not messing up any relationships. Like, we can trash over the promoter and the guy. So you have to understand these, you know, they won't do stuff to certain fighters simply because of who they're signed to. It's like gangbanging. You know what I mean? If I'm with this guy and he got respect, I'm not going to mess with him because then that's going to cause, now I got to deal with the repercussions on my end later on. But if I got this little dude, Willie Monroe, who's signed to, you know, Artie Palullo, and like, what business is that going to mess up? We could trash him all we want. So they understood the landscape and they played it very well. But I look at it like this. For every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. Nobody's mentioning Billy Joe Saunders fight Canelo right now. That's a lot of people that are like, nah, we kind of want to see what Monroe can do. Like, he's on a 3-fight winning streak. If, you know, people have found out that the whole, you know, PED thing with Charlo was like real finicky and fishy. And I won't put too much info out there about that. I'm just glad that I was exonerated. You know what I mean? Like, the glove ain't fit, so you must have quit. But the thing that I'm saying is the fans are like, they're interested, like, nah, we kind of want to see Canelo win a different fight. We don't want to see him. They're not mentioning Billy Joe Saunders. So you go back to 2017 where Billy Joe Saunders inflicted that type of work and that energy comes back. You did that to get a win over me, but guess who's being exalted to that stage now? Not you. And you can say all day, oh, I got to win over him. Nobody's going to care. So you did all of that bull crap to get a win, and now it's caused you a deficit. Now that you didn't know, nobody knew COVID was going to happen. I'm the logical choice right now for Canelo. And what happens if I luck up and beat Canelo? Oh my goodness. Then the rematch, man, Billy Joe Saunders would be not talked about anymore. So I believe in God. I believe in the universe. I believe in energy. And this is why I try to treat people with respect. This is why I don't, I try to love everybody the same. I don't be in, like, I'm black. So I'm not saying that there aren't racist black people, but I'm like at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to dealing with this racial stuff that you see in the world. And I dealt with that when I came over to London. So, and with all of that, I still didn't lash back. I still didn't say, you didn't see, you can go on my Twitter, you can go on my Instagram. I didn't do anything. I didn't say anything racial back. I just smiled and said, God bless you. And I walked diligently. And because I did that, and everybody was saying, oh, you a punk. Oh man, I'd have did this. Oh, I'd have did that. Well, guess what? By me turning the other cheek and living my godly mind, it's put me in a position to possibly get a huge fight right now that I probably wouldn't have got if I wouldn't have went through that. So thank you, Billy Joe Saunders. You won the fight, but I won the war, baby.
Willie, moving back to Canelo, final thing on it. We obviously know you've campaigned through your career at middleweight. Canelo's kind of moved between weights, last up at light heavyweight. Everybody sees him as a phenomenal force at middle, and now he's looking at super middle. If a fight happens between yourself and Canelo, does it have to be super middleweight, or do you think it could happen at middleweight?
It could be at whatever weight Canelo decides. He's the cash cow. They're the guys that are in control. Show me where the ring is. Let's get the business right behind the fight, and let me know where we're fighting at. You ain't got to tell me nothing else. Let's get the business right behind it and put the ring there.
Moving away from obviously Canelo, something I want to go back to that you said earlier on. You see David Benavidez as the #1 super middleweight in the world. Obviously, Callum Smith is technically ranked through the ring and what have you as the #1 in the world. What would be your thoughts if Callum Smith was to face either one of the other world champions like a David Benavidez or a Billy Joe Saunders or even Canelo? Again, his name was mentioned 4, 5, 6 months ago for that fight.
And no super middleweights beating David Benavidez. I don't think no light heavyweights beating David Benavidez. This kid is like, I don't know. I think he hit the market with his skills and ability at the right time. I mean, this kid turned pro. He's like Canelo. He turned pro and is like, well, not as young as Canelo, but he turned pro and is like 18, 19 years old. This kid was a heavyweight, and he's freaking 6'3". He fights super middleweight, and he's brought that power down from 2-something when he was in the amateurs. He's fast as shit. He's like a fucking superhuman. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm seeing it like that. Maybe I'm being biased because I like him. The first time I saw him fight, he fought, I forget the kid's name, but I think Andi Ruiz was on the same card, if I'm not mistaken. And it was like 2016. I forget David Jackson, something like that. And I saw what was his name? I saw that kid that he fought knock so many guys out in the amateurs and when he turned pro. So I was like, yo, and David Benavidez, I'm like, I had never seen this kid. And when I saw what he did to that kid and I watched how that kid had beat so many people and knocked people out like cold, I was like, yo, this kid is special. And then every fight after that, I had to catch. Like David Benavidez, I think that kid has everything it takes to be a great super middleweight and light heavyweight. He could possibly retire undefeated, pound for pound, like a Joe Calzaghe, or Floyd. He could retire undefeated. To unify both weight classes, he's special. That's how I see it. So I mean, Callum Smith is dope, but he ain't beating no David Benavidez. No.
William, my final question to you before I leave you to enjoy the rest of your day. You mentioned him earlier, Tyson Fury. Last week it came out that himself and Anthony Joshua had agreed a deal in principle over financial terms to fight twice in 2021. Fury, AJ, Willie, if the fight goes ahead, how do you see it playing out?
It all depends on who shows up best that night because Fury has shown that he can be put down. And so is Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua I think when it comes to heavyweight power, he's number 2 in line next to Deontay Wilder. Then you got to go with Anthony Joshua. I mean, when it comes to heavyweight power punchers, I would say Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua, and Andy Ruiz as far as like who are like the stone cold punchers. And the thing is, you can't rule out a puncher. Because I've seen guys get their ass outboxed for 10 rounds, and the 11th round here come that one punch, and it's over. You know what I mean? I've seen that many a times. And you got to realize that it's going to be a split crowd, because the UK loves Anthony Joshua just as much as they love, Tyson Fury. So I think it'll be a 50-50 fight, and it all depends on who shows up best that night. And we can say that, people would say that Andy Ruiz will probably be able to outbox Anthony Joshua. But look how Anthony Joshua just outboxed Andy Ruiz. So Anthony Joshua has moving and boxing ability also. So I think that'll be a dope fight. But I think Fury has to get past Wilder one more time, right?
Yes, he does. But they're looking, if it happens, there's rumours that potentially Australia on Christmas Day, Wilder Fury 3.
Yeah, let's not look past Deontay Wilder, because I don't care what you say. A man with a game changer like that, with a right hand like that, like I said, at any given time, you could be winning 12 minutes, you could be winning 11 and a half rounds. Here come the last 30 seconds of that 12th round, and boom, it happened in the first fight. And he got up. Obviously, you got to give props, because he woke up from the dead. He was asleep, but at the end of the day, you still can't rule out a guy like that. And, so many people say, well, all Deontay Wilder has is a right hand. That can't be true, because everybody that says that has either been hit and knocked out by it. So if I were a heavyweight fighter, I wouldn't even breathe those words that all he has is a right hand, because you lower yourself. All you have to look out for is a right hand, and you still get hit by it. You haven't had to look out for a jab. You haven't had to look out for a hook, no uppercuts, no movement. All you had to duck, you had one job, one fucking job. Is to duck a right hand for 12 rounds, and you couldn't do it. So if that's the case, if that's truly the case, and all he has is a right hand, I would suggest that these other fighters stop saying that, because it makes you look bad. You mean to tell me all he has is a right hand? That's all. And you couldn't get past that? You got a whole toolbox. He showed up to the job with just a wrench and did the job better than you? Be careful how you say that.
Willie, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. Before I let you go, though, what would you like to say to everyone who tunes in to watch our interview?
Man, just prayers up for Willie Monroe that we get the Canelo fight. I've been pushing for a big fight, and this is a fight to where I'm like, mentally I'm okay. You know what I mean? Going into the Golovkin fight, mentally, I was younger. I was like 27, hadn't been in a fight that big, haven't fought in front of a crowd that big, haven't been in a promotion that big. I was a little, I ain't gonna lie, I was a little disgruntled. I was different. And then obviously we saw what happened with Billy Joe Saunders. But I think those two big fights and dealing with what I dealt with in those fights and what I've dealt with over my career has prepared me to be able to put on a great fight with Canelo. And I think if they give us the fight, I've already said this fight should be called the Big Bang, because you're about to get two opposing figures with a high level of intelligence and skill level that are about to fight each other on a scientific level, on a molecular level. This is the Big Bang, and I think it's going to be a very, very entertaining, skillful fight.
Willie, it's been a pleasure to catch up with you. As I say, best of luck with the rebuild, best of luck with the coming months ahead. We'll keep in touch with you and your team, and I'd love to catch up with you in the near future. As I say, stay safe, mate, and I'll speak to you soon. Thank you for speaking to Boxing Social.
God bless you, man. Thanks for having me on.